Hello and welcome again to the ZGuy programming channel, Python edition. Today's topic, looping. Now this will be a two-part series. This will be the first of two parts. We're going to discuss Python loops, and as its name implies, we can give our programs the ability to loop or repeat a section of code. We can choose one looping construct which allows us to loop for X number of repetitions, or another programming construct which we'll discuss today, which allows you to loop until a particular condition is met. In these two videos, the first one will be discussing the while programming construct today, and our next video will get into the for programming construct for looping. Okay, so let's write our first looping statement, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a loop that sums up the values from 1 to 100. So 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 up to and including 100. All right, our code is going to look like this. We put a comment to describe what we're going to do. We set a sum variable equal to 0. We want to initialize our summation to 0. And we're going to create this index variable. This is what we're going to, the number that we're going to count. We're going to set it to our first number, a value of 1. Now the while statement's key word is, you guessed it, while. And after the word while, we need to create a condition that as long as that condition is true, it will execute the block of code underneath the while statement. So our condition is index less than or equal to 100. If that is true, it will fall down to the next line that begins our block here with our indentation, and it will set the sum equal to the current value of sum, which in our case is 0 the first time through, plus index, which is 1. So our sum is going to be 1 on the first time through. Then we're going to take the value of index and add 1 to it. So it starts out as 1, we add 1, it becomes 2. Since we have no more indented lines after this index statement, it goes back to the beginning, reevaluates this statement again to see if it's still true. Is index less than or equal to 100? Our index is 2. That is true. So it drops down to the next line, executes the sum statement, sum, which is a value of 1 from the previous execution, plus the index, which is 2, gives us a value of 3, drops down, increments index, it was 2, now it's going to be 3, and then it'll go back to the beginning of the loop and continue this until index becomes 101, at which point it will drop out of the loop down to the next statement that is indented to the left, at which place we'll print the sum that we've accumulated here in this loop. Okay, so let's save that program as loops1.py, and then let's run that, and we'll see that the sum is 50-50. The sum of all the values from 1 to 100. One thing you must be very careful of when you're executing or when you're creating this conditional statement here is that at some point that conditional becomes false. If it stays true and it can never be false, then you'll end up with what is called an infinite loop. Now, one of the ways this happens quite frequently is someone will leave this line right here out of their program, and index will never get incremented, and it'll always stay 1. So it'll just get stuck, and it'll just keep saying sum plus 1, sum plus 1 over and over and over. And because you never increment your index, this will never become a false statement and drop out. So be very careful that you've put logic within this block that eventually causes this statement to become false and drop out of the while loop. Okay, so let's now look at another version of the summation of values 1 to 100. You will find in programming there's 10 ways to do everything. Some are better than others. This is not necessarily the best way to do this, but I wanted to do it this way to illustrate for you a couple of new concepts. If you create a while statement and put a number in here, and you put any number other than 0, that condition will evaluate to true. So in this case, what we've done is created a purposeful, intentional infinite loop. This will never become false, and this loop will run forever unless we have a way to get out of the loop. We have the sum statement, okay? This is the same, this syntax is a little bit new for you maybe. It's the same as sum equals sum plus index, okay? So plus equals just is a shortened version of this sum equals sum plus. And again, we increment our index by 1. But here's the new piece to this puzzle. Instead of the conditional happening up here to determine when we break out of a loop, we've put it inside the loop itself, and we say if index is greater than 100, break. And that's our new command here, is the break command. Break gets us out of the loop. At the point that this condition becomes true and we execute the break statement, it leaves the loop immediately and drops down to the print statement. So you will find that depending on your given programming situation, you might have multiple reasons for jumping out of a loop early, and the break command can be used to provide that functionality to you. Okay, in this example, we're going to sum up the values from 1 to 100, but not include the value 50. So once again, we initialize our sum and our index. We create an infinite loop like we did last time. And we have an extra if statement in here that says if index equals 50, let's go ahead and increment the index to 51, just like we normally would do. But we have an extra command in here called continue. Remember, the break command kicks us out of the loop. The continue command brings us immediately back to the beginning of the loop. So let's say the index is 49. This evaluates to true. Is index 50? No, it's not. So we drop down. We sum. We add 49 to it. We increment our index. Now it's 50. Is it greater than 100? No. So we go back to the top of the loop. It's true. Is our index equal to 50? Yes, it is. Let's make the index 51, and let's continue back to the top of the loop. This allows us to skip the sum command, thereby not adding the value 50 when we're summing our values from 1 to 100. All right, so let's save this one and run it. If you remember, when we ran the values from 1 to 100, our sum value was equal to 50/50. And now our sum is 5,000. So we indeed did not sum up the value of 50 as we were incrementing through our loop. Okay, for our final exercise, we are going to generate what's called the Fibonacci series. This is a series of numbers where the next number in sequence is equal to the sum of the prior two numbers. If that doesn't quite make sense to you, it will as soon as we run the program. We'll explain it when we see the output. But we're going to set a variable n, which is going to be how many numbers we want to generate. We're going to set the variables a and b equal to 1. We're going to set our index to 1. Then we're going to do a while loop while our index is less than or equal to n. So this is how we're going to control our 15 numbers. Now these three statements here are how we go through the calculations of determining what the next number is going to be. We print the number, increment our index by 1, come back up here, evaluate whether we're less than or equal to 15. If so, and we drop out of the program. Alright, so let's save this one and let's take a look at what the Fibonacci series looks like. So as you'll see here, 1 plus 2 is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5, 3 plus 5 is 8. So the next number is equal to the two previous numbers added together. That's what the Fibonacci series is. And this is just a little simple program to demonstrate that. Hopefully this will be another in a series of videos to help you along in your Python experience. Join us on the second video where we'll talk about the for programming construct. We'll go through basically the same examples, but we'll rewrite them using for loops instead of while loops. Until then, have a great day and enjoy your Python.